then I'll speak a little bit more after James on another thing happening tomorrow. So take it away.
Yeah.
That's for you.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for having me today. And I got to tell you, Teresa Baker gave me a hard time last night. She says that I've been doing this work longer than she's been alive. That's not true.
It's not nice either. It's not nice.
But the reality is that not unlike Kenji, I've been attending Outdoor Retailer as an event for a very long time. I've actually started my career in 1989, but I've been attending this show since 1992. And when I began my career, much of what we're experiencing now was kind of just in its very much fledgling stages. And the book that I created, The Adventure Gap, Changing the Face of the Outdoors, is basically the upshot of the last 25 years of my career, which, like many of you, started, frankly, when I was a kid. I've been engaged and involved in the outdoor as a participant from a very, very early age. And after an experience in college, being able to exercise my personal interest and passion for the outdoors, I really had many opportunities to spend time in nature. I'm here with my very best friend, John Mayer. The year we graduated from college in 1988, hiking to the Grand Canyon for the first time. Directly after college, working for the Campus Outing Club, and this is not
being happy.
Yeah. Actually, working for the Campus Outing Club at the University of California, Berkeley, where I got a degree in anthropology and spent the very first year of my career in the industry working as a climbing instructor in Yosemite. Directly after that, actually, why don't I have you advance the slides for me? Being able to spend time with friends in the outdoors, and in this photograph, being able to do an ascent of Mount Whitney at the highest peak in the lower 48. But also being able to go on to have a career in the outdoor industry. And this is really where my story here begins. This photograph was taken my very first season as the first African-American sales representative for a little company you might have heard of called the North Face. And this was our sales force at the time, and I was one of 12 full-time professional independent sales representatives for the North Face. And as it happens, I was actually hired the same year that they hired the first woman to be an independent sales rep. And this is in 1992. And from there, I actually had the experience being able to travel around the country, but specifically in the Midwest Territory as an independent sales rep. And much of my job was to be the face of the North Face in 6 Midwestern states that I lovingly refer to as Louisiana Purchase. Because it basically represents Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, North and South Dakota, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And me and my dog Jenga traveled that territory 35,000 miles a year. And had a fabulous time telling the story of outdoor recreation, and I was quite literally the face of this brand at the time. But one of the things that I realized was that there seemed to be a divide between who spends time in nature and who doesn't. Because many of the things that you probably recognize in all these photographs is that was typically, if not exclusively, the only person of color. And something really kind of hit me that our industry did not reflect the racial and cultural diversity of our country. And attending an event like Outdoor Retailer from 25 years ago, I was quite literally one of maybe 10 to 15 people of color in the entire building back when we were in Reno, also at the Salt Palace. And when we started talking about this, I started doing some research and came up with some interesting statistics. For example, currently the African American population represents 13% of the population as a whole. But they actually only represent less than 2% of national park visitors. Now, if you take a look demographically at where we are from the year 2000 to 2014, the nation's black population grew 35% faster than the population as a whole. And by the year 2060, we're estimated to go from 4.5 million to 7.5 million, making up 17.9% of the total population. So what happens if, as these numbers are increasing, our participation in the national parks and other wild and scenic places doesn't increase with it? And ultimately, I think that creates a problem, not just in terms of the industry of outdoor recreation, but the long-term preservation of our wild and scenic places. Because if we take a look at the demographic reality, it's estimated by the year 2045, fully half of the US population will be non-white. And if we don't keep pace with these statistics, ultimately we will have a majority of the population with limited affinity for the outdoors. Because when we take a look at what that ultimately means, when minorities basically become the majority, what happens when we fail to engage a new emerging population of youth that will be the engine of the future? So it's at that point, I think that it's very important, as we're moving upon all of us in this room, to directly engage a new generation of young people who can become part of the outdoor industry. Because we have a long history of the protection and preservation of our wild and scenic places. Some of you might recognize this photograph from my book. This is Charles Madison Crenshaw. And in 1964, he became the first African American to summit the highest peak in North America, a mountain then called Mount McKinley, now called Denali. And what's especially interesting about Crenshaw is he actually did that 7 days after the signing of the Civil Rights Amendment. And oddly enough, if you take a look at Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, he quite literally outlines outdoor recreation as part of his vision to ascend to mountains. The last paragraph reads, let freedom ring from every mountainside, from the curvaceous slopes of California to the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. But at the time, there were places in this country where Charles Crenshaw couldn't live, he couldn't vote, he couldn't exercise his rights as an American citizen. But as mountains do, they don't discriminate. So I think we have an excellent opportunity to be able to share the important work of racial and cultural integration and also diversity and inclusion through the work that we do in the outdoors. In 2013, when we put together the first all-African American team ascent of Denali, we actually put together a coalition of athletes that are reflective of an emerging population so that we now have solid visual representation of what mountaineers can look like. So hopefully, as we engage this new generation of young people, they will see people who look more like themselves. So much so that in 2018, Outdoor Afro successfully put the first team of all African American climbers on the summit of Kilimanjaro. That included one of our athletes from Expedition Holland, the youngest female member of our team, Rosemary Saul, actually did something that no one had ever done before. And that was because of the support and encouragement that she received from people in this room and from the work that we've successfully done to make our industry more diverse, equitable, inclusive. So much so that when you go to Outdoor Retailer today, it looks a little bit more like this. And as we talk about what it means to make our industry more inclusive, we can ultimately, hopefully, introduce more people into the sports that we love. And I want to make sure that when we get into the outside, we can see ourselves as part of it. So thank you very much.